Morning, everybody. Pressed a few wrong buttons there before I started. Got myself in a tizzy. Oh, dearie me. Very good morning to you all. Welcome to Down in Farm Studio. My name is Ali Board, just in case you were lurking around the internet and hadn't realised what you had happened upon. I'm a mixed media artist based on the South Coast, based in Dorset, and every week I bring you Technique Tuesday. In the past, before our unusual situation, we would pre-record something and then I would make it available at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. But seeing as we are in this situation and seeing as we are actually really enjoying going live, we are currently bringing you Technique Tuesday live. Now, how long that will last, I can't tell you, but for the time being, grab your coffee, sit back and relax, because it's a bit of a demonstration with a difference today. Before I get started, I just want to say a few hellos, because you might have seen a tiny bit of video pop up somewhere else when I pressed the wrong button. So I'm just going to go and say good morning to everybody. Good morning, Ali, Jill, Sally, Caroline, Anne, Lynn, Sally. People saying good morning to each other. Good morning, James. Good morning, Tony, Andrea. Oh gosh, you're all there this morning. Goodness, there's loads of you. Patricia, Joy, good morning, Vera, good to see you too. Mark, Sue, no, it's not you, Sue, it's me. I went a bit trigger happy this morning, pressed the wrong button. Mandy says she's got her cup of tea. Good morning, Lou. Good morning, Ali WT, Linda S. Linda, in answer to your question, these are always archived on the videos tab on the Facebook page. So when this is all done and dusted today, if you want to go back to the videos tab and just click on that, you'll see lots of them, plenty for you to do. Hello's coming in thick and fast. And what's lovely is you're all saying good morning to each other. Good morning, Sharon. Good morning, Sandy, Anne, Janice, Simone. Sup, Gary. Sandra, all sorts of people. Thank you very much for tuning in this morning. And Christine, morning, Ali, and everybody. Isn't it lovely that you're all saying good morning to everybody else too? If you have any questions about today's demonstration, please do pop them in the chat. I will try to get to them live if I can. But if I can't, I will go back in afterwards. And the beady-eyed among you may have noticed that usually what I do is I do a demonstration and then I go over to my blog and I write a little bit more about it and about my thought processes. And I archive the video on there too. And last week, completely forgot, completely slipped my mind. I don't know what I was thinking of. I didn't write myself a note. That's why. I didn't write myself a big note that says, Ali, for goodness sake, put it on the blog. But I've pre-done the blog today. So as soon as this is done and as soon as I've sorted the tech out, then you can go back over there and you can read a bit more about it. Good morning, Anik. Good morning, Cheryl. Good morning, Susan. It's very lovely to have you all here. So today, we are going to be doing something a little bit different and something that I have a little bit of knowledge about, which is rare. And because our theme of the week is a trip to the theatre or a ticket to the theatre, I thought that we would kind of disappear down that route. Now, why is the theatre so important to me? I mean, the theatre is probably important to everybody out there. It's lovely to go, isn't it? It's lovely to go and see something, whether that be a play or a musical or some ballet, dance, whatever it is. It's very important to me. That's where I started my career. I started my career by thinking that standing on a stage was the most exciting place that I could possibly be. And I learnt ballet, I learnt how to teach ballet, and I'm very proud to say that I still have what's called a hobby job, in that I still get to teach a little bit of ballet, I still get to bring dancers up through the ranks and prepare them to go off into the big wide world. Now, one of the reasons that the theatre is so important to me at the moment is because, of course, our very rich heritage of performers are not getting the opportunity to perform. And who knows when that's going to go back again. And so I hope it doesn't happen, but I have a feeling that provincial companies are going to suffer. I think that theatres are going to suffer. and looking at some of my still performing professional friends, they're in dire straits. Now, I'm not saying that their plight is more or less important than anybody else's, but it's just very personal to me. So when this is all over and we all feel safe again, buy a ticket for something, anything, a gig, go to the pub, ask for live music, all of those kind of things, because we're going to need to get this back on track again. Now, one of the things I thought I would share with you today is the fact that ballet paintings, ballet shoes, dancers, all of those kind of things, good ones are hard to come by. Now, I'm not saying that mine are any good, but what I am saying is that when you've got a bit of knowledge about dance, or about how a dancer is constructed, or about how a pointe shoe, which is our subject today, when you understand how they're constructed, then you can look at things with a bit more clarity. So I'm not necessarily going to do a painting from start to finish today, but I am going to tell you the things that I look out for when I am doing a painting. Now, I struggle with doing dances. You would think that having a lot of years worth of dance knowledge under my belt, that I would really, really love to do dances all the time. And I do love painting dancers, but my issue with it is that I know what I'm looking for. And so if my drawing skills don't match my technical knowledge, that's when I struggle. So let's take you to the overhead shot. I see lots of comments coming in, people saying good morning. Avril, hello Ali, theatre is my first love ahead of art. Oh, you and me both, Avril. Thank you very much if you are just tuning in. We are going to be tackling this subject today. We're going to be tackling a pair of pointe shoes. I'm going to talk a little bit more about pointe shoes in a second, and I'm going to tell you who these used to belong to. But I thought I would share a painting with you that I did, which you will see if you have purchased my book. And this is a painting that I called On Pointe. And it's done from a photograph that I found on Pixabay, and actually it's quite a popular photograph because I've seen it used all over the place. And you can see that dancer's on her toes, and she's got her foot against her ankle just behind. This is a position called coup de pied, and probably ready for some rises or some turns or something similar. So this was done in watercolour and gouache, and I will talk a little bit more about that later. Apologies if you can see a fly buzzing into shot. That fly has really challenged me this morning. So one of the things that I wanted to do was make this particular painting look realistic. You very, very often see either badly shot photographs for reference, or people don't understand how a shoe is constructed. And I thought it would be interesting for you to actually see a pair of pointe shoes to understand why this needs to be so carefully considered in this way. So here is a pointe shoe. Now, these pointe shoes were the last pair of pointe shoes I ever owned. I didn't get to wear them for performance. I think I wore them for a couple of rehearsals, hence the reason that they're in fairly good nick. And these are kind of an old-fashioned pointe shoe, and these are still made. But they are a little bit more like trainers now. This is a company called Freed of London. These were always my favourite pointe shoes, but you do get some ones that, like I say, are a bit more like trainers now. They've kind of got plastic inserts, and they're much more flexible and those kind of things. But one of the things that people don't realise is actually looking down them, how the foot goes in, because there's all sorts of weird and wonderful theories about how a dancer gets her foot in that. Now this is papier-mâché. Listen how hard they are. Really, really, really hard. So it's like papier-mâché, and the dancer's foot goes into here so that she is literally standing on her toes, and that is all she has to balance on. I say she, I mean, it's mostly women. I have seen men dance on pointe as well. If you've ever seen Midsummer Night's Dream, you'll know that the part of bottom is played by a man who also dances on pointe. Now, these are instruments of torture. I'm not going to lie. In teaching, a lot of the students ask me if I would like to put my pair of pointe shoes on, and I always say, no, I've done my time. So let's take you around a pointe shoe and to show you how they are constructed. So they have a leather sole, which is really, really slippery when you get it, and most dancers kind of score it with a knife or take some sandpaper to it. And on this shoe, you can see all sorts of marks about what sort of thing has been done on the shoe, because I was incredibly particular about my shoes. Who'd have thought? So this is the maker's mark, this is the width of the shoe, this was the size of the shoe, and then there's all sorts of other stampings on there, which I will tell you more about when we get to the front of the shoe. It has an insole that is made of cardboard, and what a lot of dancers do is that they strip this out straight away, take that plate out that's in the middle, and then glue it all back together again. It very much depends on the part you are playing or the ballet that you are performing in as to how flexible you need this shoe to be. Now, because this is an almost brand new shoe, you can see that it's not very flexible at all. If I was trying to jump around in this, I wouldn't do a very good job of it. And you will see ballet dancers strip them, put coat hangers in the back of them, they will shut them indoors, they will smack them about on concrete, they will do all sorts of things. Some of them will cut the satin away so that it's less slippery. Some of them will darn the surface of it very neatly and tidily so that it creates a bit of friction. Some will only darn around the edge when they cut the satin away so that it extends the line of the shoe. All sorts of things. These are made of satin. Obviously they are made to suit your body colour too, and you can get them for all ethnicities, so you can get them much darker. Sometimes if you want to clean them up, you can use calamine lotion. All sorts of things happen to this shoe, but one of the most important parts is this section of the shoe, and this is called the vamp. So this part is the part which, if you look back at my painting, you can see is holding the majority of the dancer's foot in it. I used to have a very deep vamp on mine because I was lucky enough to have quite a developed instep, so that when I put my foot in my shoe and I bent it over like that, I didn't want my foot falling out of the front. You will find some dancers cut theirs away. They're usually held on with ribbons. As you can see, this is a real tradition going back hundreds of years. But dancers have also realised that they do sometimes slip off the back of your foot. So dancers also put elastic on the back or mesh or all kinds of things. But there is the anatomy of a pointe shoe. And so understanding them and understanding how they work has a real bearing over how you paint them. So here is the painting that, like I said, I did for my book. And you can see now why there are sections that are so important. I've got the back of it here. Oh, this pointe shoe is shedding all over my painting. You can see I've got the back here. I've tried to put the creases in the satin. I've tried to get a nice line of the dancer's foot. I've tried to get her turned out, because if you've ever watched a ballet dancer walk up and down the stairs, they will walk at 180 degrees, so they sort of waddle like this. And so that turnout does not come from their ankles, it comes from their hips, and therefore they really struggle to put their feet at kind of 12 o'clock. But that is shown here by this leg being turned out and this leg being turned out too. If you are interested in the colours that I used for this, I used a combination of Daniel Smith paints and De La Rowney gouache. So I had a cobalt turquoise and I had a pyroline green, and I tried really hard to do it in watercolour, but it just wasn't happening for me that day. I used gouache, and you can probably see that I've got a kind of fleshy colour going on here and some white and all those sorts of things. So there's my painting there. Now here's the one that I'm going to start today. This is also done from a photograph from Pixabay. And you can see straight away that this dancer's foot was not as developed. So if you go back to the original painting, you can see that she's got a really developed instep there. So is what we call over her shoe. So her foot becomes more prominent. And on here as well, you can see that's not quite so prominent there, but she has got her weight in the centre, so she's well over that platform there. Good morning if you have just joined us. Apologies if I don't get to everybody's good morning straight away. I've gone into my happy place and started talking about ballet. So I have drawn this freehand, and the proportions of getting this drawing down are tricky. I'm not going to lie to you. I have seen paintings before where people make the shoe look too big, or they make the poor dancer's ankles look like they're a mile wide, all of those kind of things. So I have looked very carefully at the proportions of this, about getting the depth of the shoe correct, about getting the depth of that vamp, all of those kind of things in proportion. I've tried to get a few creases in too. I've tried to get those ribbons in. Actually, the ribbons are really sometimes quite tricky to get them so that they look like they're wrapped around the ankle. And I've got one foot tucked behind the other. So this is a position that I'm guessing, because I am looking at this at a slightly odd angle, but I'm guessing she is in what's called fifth position, up on point. And you can see that her legs are squeezed tight together. So all I've done for the time being is draw it in pencil. I've just probably done a little bit more pencil than I would do ordinarily, simply because I need to look at some of the creases, I need to look at where the fabric wraps around the shoe, and I need to look at some of the shadows. Now, one of the techniques that I find really useful for drawing a subject like this is a technique that's actually stolen from oil painting, which is called Grisaille. And the idea of Grisaille was, if you painted a portrait, you would underpaint that portrait in shades of grey before you put any kind of flesh colours over the top of it, so that your shadows were all done and taken care of. And I'm appropriating that a little bit. Grisaille is something that I do use quite a lot in my work, which is to go back in with my pencil, and there you can see I'm adding some shading so that I'm making some distance between her foot, the ribbon and the shoe. Let's put another shadow in just in here as well, so that I have got that bit of distance between this, which is a cord that runs all the way around the shoe. You can probably see that tie hanging out, which dancers like to pull astonishingly tight to make sure their foot is well and truly in that shoe and it's not going to fall off. Because believe me, that is not something you want to happen on stage. So I'll put a little bit of extra shadow in around there too. And I'll start to put some shading in on this back one as well. While I'm doing this, good morning to everybody who said good morning. Avril, what is Avril saying? Regarding proportions, I watched a video the other day where the artist printed a black and white photo of the subject and drew a grid on it, and then drew a grid on his paper to make sure the drawing was in proportion and scaled if necessary. So simple, but I'd never thought of it. Yeah, Avril, that's a really, really good tip, and one that artists use quite a lot, actually, gridding up. You can even purchase from places like the SAA a pre-drawn grid, which you can overlay over the top of your photograph, and then you can reproduce the proportions on your painting. Who's saying her first Tuesday? Anne. Anne, my mum Beryl has joined me. Good morning, Beryl. Good morning. You're very, very welcome. I hope you're enjoying ballet shoes this morning. I'm just adding a little bit of shading into this foot. This foot at the back is obviously considerably darker than the foot at the front. I will get to that. All I'm going to do for you this morning is put a few washes on it, and then if another Technique Tuesday transpires where I can whip the painting out again, then I will do so. So I've put that little bit of shading in, and you can probably see I've put some shading when I was preparing for today's demonstration down on the ground too, so that it really looks like those shoes are grounded. Now, I've put all sorts of materials out here today because I wasn't entirely sure what I needed, but I do know that one of the first things I want to do is to put a wash on the background. And to do that, I'm going to use a little bit of Jane's Grey watercolour. Now, Jane's Grey is me being lazy, because Jane's Grey is a Daniel Smith colour that is basically ultramarine and burnt sienna mixed together in a pan. Now, I have tried mixing those together and making this colour, but I can't do it, hence the reason I'm being lazy. Thank you, Janet. Super description of point shoes. Sandra, what shading pencil are you using? That's a really, really good question. Now, I am, as if you know me, you will know that I'm not a massive fan of drawing. And so the pencil that I am using, I think, is an HB. I think it's an HB. I couldn't tell you because it's the pencils that I use in the studio for writing up my notes. It was literally the one I grabbed this morning. But you use something better. Don't pay any attention to what I'm saying to you. You could use an HB, a 2B, something like that. I've got a number 10 SA8 imitation sable brush. I've got a pot of water here that's still got gold floating on the surface from the workshops that I ran at the weekend, and I can't get rid of it. So do you know what? I'm just going to put gold on my piece of paper. And I've got the good old security blanket piece of kitchen roll here, ready to go. What I am going to do is put a little bit of water. And yes, I am probably going to put gold on my Daniel Smith, but never mind. It's all fine. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some water just around the outskirts. You could do this with a spray bottle if you wanted to. Being perfectly honest, this morning I didn't bring my spray bottle from my prep table to my demo area, so I'm doing it the old-fashioned way with a brush. So I'm putting water down, and all I want to do is to put some element of colour in the background so that these shoes come forward. So I'm going to take that Jane's Grey and I'm going to paint negatively around this leg here. So this is dry paper, so here it's wet where you can see it disappearing, and here it's on to dry so I get a nice crisp edge. I can take some water to it if I want to blend it out. I could make it run, I could make it do all sorts of things, but I'm going to try and keep it nice and simple today because I'm in that kind of mood, really. What mood are the rest of you in? Anna said we all know you like a bit of bling. It has been known, Anne, that I like a bit of a sparkle on my paintings. So while that side is done, I'm going to take my kitchen roll. It's a bit tightly wound. Christine says, I never realised ballet shoes were so complex. Yes, they are the equivalent of a pair of trainers or a pair of spiked shoes for running. They are absolutely the thing that is so important to a dancer, and dancers will go to the ends of the earth to get a point shoe that fits their foot, because in the same way that you walk into a shoe shop and you make sure that you've got a pair of shoes that fits your feet, and look what happens if they don't fit your feet properly. Dancers spend their entire lives in these shoes, and therefore it's incredibly important to them that they get it right. So we're getting the Jane's Grey down on this side. As you can probably see, one of the reasons that I really like Jane's Grey is because it's very atmospheric. And if we're talking about the theatre today, we need a bit of drama, don't we? So there's my Jane's Grey going in. Some people have spotted that my husband has joined the party, who has been banished into the house. So that get nice and quiet. He's actually keeping my dogs quiet at the moment. And a couple of you have spotted that he's joined in. Can't get away with anything, bees. So I'm putting the shadow in down here. Good morning, if you've just joined. Liz is asking, was that ultramarine and burnt sienna? Yes, that is technically the combination that we have got going on here. But like I said, I'm being lazy. So I'm going to put that shadow in. Oh, apparently I can't talk and do fine lines at the same time. There we go. Putting that shadow in. And hopefully you can see straight away how this is now starting to show up the shoe. And let's do a bit of good old-fashioned rag rolling there. I know I say don't put your brush back in. It's a whole do as I say, not as I do scenario always, isn't it? And we'll make this a bit misty because I was too busy faffing about and wasn't doing it fast enough. So let's get that in. That's good. And I will think we will leave that be. There's a bit of a tide mark going on here. But you know what? It's a live demonstration. It's all good. Now straight away, hopefully you can see those feet have been kind of thrown forwards. And you can see that they're now starting to stand out, but they look really peculiar because there's a bit of a mismatch going on now, isn't there? We've got a nice kind of fuzzy atmospheric background, but these now look a bit ghost-like, and they need some bit of attention, really. So I'm going to go back in with that Jane's Grey again, and I'm going to work up those shadows that I had started to put in pencil. And let's get that one in on the right hand side. I need my trusty kitchen roll in, and I can push this colour across. So in the photograph that I am using, she has actually got bare legs. In the photograph that I was using for that painting, she had the traditional pink tights on, hence the reason why her legs look like that. But in this photograph, it's flesh coloured. I have no idea whether I would continue with that or not at the moment. But for the time being, I'm very happy just popping in my shadows and making sure that I've got some 3 dimensions starting to come into my painting. That's better already. Let's take care of the edge of that with a little bit of kitchen roll. And then over on this side, I really want to get, there's quite a difficult shadow on this one because the back of this shoe is dark and there's only a little chink of light on her foot. So I'm going to leave a space, I think, and then I can make decisions about that later when I can see the rest of the tonal values of my shoe. What else is going on? We definitely need, I'm going to turn my painting 180 degrees temporarily. Always looks very bizarre upside down. Now looks like she's got her legs in the air. And I'm going to work on the shadow that's on the back of here because that is really quite dark in there and goes down. Ideally, I would probably be drying all of this off with a hairdryer if I was just working it up myself. But we're live, you don't want to be watching me use a hairdryer. So I'm going to fly by the seat of my pants and try to get that in. Okay, that's looking better, looking more 3-dimensional now. Let's turn it the right way. Good morning. If you have just joined us, you're very welcome to this Technique Tuesday. I am tackling a picture of some ballet shoes. I'm not going to be able to finish it all at today's session, but hopefully this gives you a bit of a chance to see the beginnings of a painting. If you missed the beginning, you're very welcome to go back to the videos tab on the Facebook page and watch it right from the start, when you will see my very own pair of pointe shoes, and I describe the anatomy of a pointe shoe and why they're so important. So here we go, that's looking a bit better, looking a bit more 3-dimensional now. What we got going on over here? So there's a shadow going on in there, there's a bit of a shadow. I'm very much, with my method of painting, somebody that likes to problem solve as she goes. I don't like making all my decisions in advance. So for example, I don't honestly know what I'm going to be doing in here. Is this going to be dark and this going to be light? Haven't decided those things yet. So if I haven't decided them, rather than trying to labour away at them, I'm going to leave them until I have a bit more information to be able to complete it. Good morning, Wendy. Thank you very much. That's very kind. What I am going to do down here is get a nice shadow in down here at the bottom, because this foot, and I've made that corner a bit sharp, this foot is definitely darker. So let's get that in. Oh, it looks like she's spilt something on her shoe at the moment, doesn't it? And then let's blend that out with a bit of water. And this way of working is a really nice way of kind of tracking your way around a painting if you're unsure of the subject. If you're thinking, oh, I don't know what to do, I'm a bit scared of this subject, this kind of keeps it nice and simple, keeps it monotone. What I also need to do is get a really dark shadow, and let's be brave. You can probably see that I am dripping colour onto my paper. I don't tend to worry about things like that. Let's get this really, really dark colour in under here. so that she is most definitely standing on something solid. And I can use a bit of water to blend that out. And that probably needs neatening up at some point and addressing, but for the time being, it's fine as it is. I can always make adjustments. This is the reason I'm a mixed media painter, because I can make adjustments later with a bit of gouache or a bit of pastel, all sorts of things. Now, because I've got a shadow under there, I now need to increase that shadow a little bit over here. So the back of this shoe is quite dark, and getting that in so it really looks like she's standing on a surface. Okay, looking at it as a whole at the moment, I'm not unhappy with it. There's some things that I would be tweaking, but I can't tweak them yet, because if I tweak them now, that's not tweaking, that's very, very much faffing. So we've got some colour on. So what I wanted to do just very quickly before we part company today is show you how I might get some colour over the top of that. So shall we pretend that's dry? Let's pretend that's dry. Now, ordinarily, I would probably reach for some flesh tint gouache, because actually flesh tint gouache is very, very similar to this colour. But I thought I'd set myself a bit of a challenge today and see if I can replicate that colour with some watercolour paints and a bit of gouache mixed in for good measure. So the three that I've got here, I've got sandstone. So these are the SAA watercolours. And I find these very useful because within the SAA range, they have quite a lot of opaque colours. And those opaque colours, ordinarily when you're doing a traditional watercolour, they might get in the way of your painting, because they look a little bit flat and can look overpainted if you're not very careful. But actually for this style of painting, where you are actually trying to replicate a colour, you're trying to replicate a fabric, this lovely kind of pinky, fleshy, satiny colour, you actually want it to be quite opaque. So I've got sandstone, I've got Naples yellow, and I've got Scarlet Lake. Now this was a bit of a guess yesterday. I don't know if these are going to work. I'm just going to see if they mix together to make my ballet shoe colour. I've also got some permanent white gouache here so that I can mix together to add some white. And hopefully you can see my palette just to the right of shot. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush now. I've got my size 6, which I need my wrist smacking. If Anita was watching me, she would be literally coming around to my house and smacking my wrist because I left it in water and now all the paint's peeling off. Sorry, Anita. And I'm going to see if I can make this ballet shoe colour. This is one of the other reasons that ballet shoes are so tricky to do, is to get the colour of that satin correct. So let's choose this hole over here. Little bit of water. Now I'm going to start with that sandstony colour because it is a good starting point. It's a bit brown for my liking, but it's not a bad start. And I'm going to add into that a little bit of Naples yellow to freshen it up and make it a little bit brighter. And then effectively what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, this is a very technical term coming up, I'm going to add a cough of pink. And by a cough, I mean putting my brush in the pink and adding a tiny bit. And we can do this by increments because I don't want to push it too far. If I add some of that Scarlet Lake in too much too soon, I'm going to end up with a glow-in-the-dark ballet shoe, which I really don't want. So there we go, there's my colour. So that was my sandstone, my Naples yellow, a tiny touch of the Scarlet Lake, and you can see now I've got somewhere approaching that colour. Now this is probably the shadow version of it. So what I can then do is take that colour over here and add some of the white. Now there are two whites in gouache. There is permanent white and there is zinc white. And ordinarily, if I wanted to make a paler version of something, I would be using zinc white rather than permanent white. But I need my white to have some real oomph today. Again, another technical term. So can you see now how I'm getting somewhere close to that colour now? So I'm really pleased with that. What a great combination. I need to remember that. Somebody write it down for me. Need to remember those combinations. Now they are opaque, so the danger is that they are going to obliterate the grey, so I'm going to make sure when I wash them in I've got plenty of water on my brush, and then that way when I go back over the top you can see they are adding colour to my shoe without painting it all in. So let's get that. We're just going to put a few washes on so that you can vaguely see where my painting would be heading. And all of a sudden it starts to come to life a little bit. It starts to have a little bit more personality just by washing those colours over the top. Let's go for the darker one, see if we can get a bit of that darker colour in the back of the shoe. See how it's going over that grey very successfully. Liking that. And then let's get this dark in over the back. And now, because I've done all the hard work, because I've done my drawing and because I have done the Grisaille and done all that, it can be sort of washes of things rather than having to worry so much about where the light areas are and where the dark areas are. I don't want to obliterate my white paper. This is the my Joyful Saunders Waterford that I rely on all the time. But it's just starting to get somewhere now. And morning, if you've just joined us, you're very, very welcome. Just to kind of go back over things, we are looking at our theme of the week, which is ticket to the theatre, trip to the theatre, and we're doing ballet today. I've got some exciting news to share with you at the end about some other theatre related things that are going on, so don't let me forget. So let's get that dark in on that side. We can have a bit of that darker colour going in. That's working. Who knew? Who knew that I knew my colours? Who thought that would be a thing? Because it was a bit of a guess last night. And let's get that colour in. And we can get that in. Now, just before I finish, I'm not going to do an awful lot more to this. I do need... Good morning, Anne. I do need to get a colour on her legs because at the moment she's still looking a bit ghost-like. Now this is where the Scarlet Lake comes in, because obviously there's not a great deal of difference between the colour of a ballet shoe and this ballet shoe and obviously my flesh colour. But if I put my hand, and we will pretend this is my leg for a second, you can hopefully see that this is a little bit more pink than this. This has kind of got a white undertone, can you see that? Whereas this has a more kind of brown, kind of pinky version of it. That is why dancers ordinarily wear pink tights, those kind of very white, pale pink tights, so that their leg and their shoe are closer matched. Now, why is that important? Why is it that your leg and your shoe are closer matched? It's incredibly important because of what dancers talk about all the time, which is line. So if you've ever seen a ballet dancer perform, they're all about the lines, the extension of the arms, the extension of the legs, everything looking like it's all coordinated. And so if you have a dancer performing with just their skin showing and a shoe on, this breaks the line. So they've either got to tint their shoe to match their actual skin colour, or you put something over your skin which is closer in appearance to the shoe. And like I said at the top of the show, you sometimes put calamine lotion on these so that the shoe even more matches the colour of the tights. And one of the things calamine lotion also does, I don't know if you can see that, yes you can in the camera, see the shine that's on there? Calamine lotion, when you paint it all over, stops that shine. And then what happens is, of course, you get a real continuation between the colour of your tights and the colour of your shoe. Who knew today would be Learn About Ballet Day? It's only because it's the thing I can talk about, and I could bore you with it for hours if I really wanted to. So let's go back to leg colour. So over on this side, I'm going to recreate that. I'm going to put a little bit of that sandstone in this time, and a little bit more of the Scarlet Lake. Oh, look at that. That's very pink. That's sunburnt colour, isn't it? But if I add some white in, and then I use my Naples yellow just to knock that back a little bit more and stop it being quite so pink and make it a little bit more fleshy. It will look very, very pink in the camera, but can you see the more water I add to it, the closer that it is to a skin tone. So let's put that to one side, and I'm going to just very quickly wash some of that colour over the top of her legs. I don't want to put too much on because I don't want her looking sunburnt, and I don't want it to be the kind of star of the show. The star of the show are the shoes. So let's get that in, and let's get some, switch to a bigger brush, Ali. Otherwise you're just scrubbing away. Let's get some more over here. I kind of ran out, didn't make myself enough. And I knew that when I mixed it up, so why didn't I listen to myself? So we've got that bit of pink going on up, and on this side too. Let's just put it in. I know we've got shadows to think about, and like I said, this is in no way completed, finished or otherwise. It's simply so that you can see a few techniques going on this morning. So just to recap, we looked at the construction of the shoe and why this shape, this kind of arched instep, is so important. We talked about the construction of a pointe shoe and the way that a toe fits into it, and why it's so important to the dancer to be up and over that shoe. And we looked at drawing it on, putting in a grey background, excuse me, and then washing combinations of colours over the top, appropriating an oil painting technique that we call Grisaille. So I'll just leave that there for a few seconds more before I switch back to you having to look at me again, just because I've got a few bits of news for you. There we go. Oh dear, a frog in my throat this morning. Been talking way too much. I hope you enjoyed that. That painting will probably sit in my demonstration folder now. I might get it out at a later date to complete it. I might roll it out for another Technique Tuesday if you would like to see me finish it further. Dear. Now, 2 bits of news. To continue our theatre theme this week, I have 2 live demonstrations coming up for you, both of which will be archived so that you can watch them at a later date. Don't worry if you can't tune in. But they are all on a theatre theme. One of them you can see just behind me. So tomorrow at 11 o'clock on the Search Press Art and Craft Books Facebook page, I will be going live to do my Tarantella painting. And I will be doing that from start to finish. The resources are already over there on the Search Press page, so you're very welcome to go. I wouldn't recommend that you paint along, just because I am going to work stupendously fast and very experimentally. But I'm not going to stop you. If you want to paint along, then please do. I think that's probably one for a later date, but certainly tune in, watch it live, because who knows where that one's going to end up. And then on Thursday, I'm going to be demonstrating for the SAA a brand spanking new painting that I have never done before. So a lot of the times we practice these things, we practice them in advance so that when we go live, there are no surprises. But this time I'm going to be doing all my experimenting on the page, and that is called Double Bass, A Night at the Opera. And I'm going to be sharing collage techniques, some tracing techniques, and we're going to be doing the head of a double bass. That information is still to come as to where you can find that, but keep an eye on my social media, and I promise as soon as I know what the link is, I will share it with you. I really hope you've enjoyed the demonstration today. I can see lots of thank yous coming in. That's really kind of you. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments. I'll leave the comments up just for a little while so that you can add to it. But take care of yourselves. Please stay safe and keep in touch, won't you? And I will see you next week.